This is the fourth script for Channel 7 in this chat, so I'll apply the script 4 variation. A cold open dropped into the middle of a finding, the longest section being the frame and the most aggressive hook type. 8 seconds. That's how long the average adult can now hold focus before the mind drifts, and after 50, it gets worse fast. But here's what a 2017 study at the University of Illinois proved across hundreds of older adults. Your focus isn't broken. It's being hijacked by a brain network that was supposed to switch off and didn't. 2 minutes a day can switch it off manually, and almost no one over 50 knows it exists. Drop straight into the finding because it's stranger than any introduction could make it sound. Inside your brain, there's a network of regions that neuroscientists call the default mode network. It was first identified around 2001 by Dr. Marcus Raichle at Washington University in St. Louis, and the discovery quietly upended how we understand attention. Here's what it does. When you're not focused on anything in particular, when your mind wanders, ruminates, replays a worry, drifts to the past or the future, this network lights up. It's the brain's idle channel, the mental chatter that runs when nothing demands your attention. Now here's the critical part. In a healthy, focused brain, the moment you start a task, the default mode network is supposed to switch off. Go quiet. Step aside so the task-focused parts of your brain can take over. Focus, in the simplest terms, is the ability to mute the chatter. Here's what changes after 50. That switch gets sticky. The default mode network doesn't fully shut down when you try to concentrate. It keeps murmuring in the background, competing for your attention even while you're trying to read, listen, or work. Research from Harvard and elsewhere has shown that as we age, this network becomes harder to suppress. The chatter doesn't get louder, it just won't turn off. So when you sit down to read a page and realize you absorbed nothing, that you were thinking about a bill, a memory, a conversation from yesterday, that's not a failure of intelligence. It's not the beginning of decline. It's the default mode network refusing to step aside. The idle channel playing over the top of the channel you actually chose. This reframes everything most people believe about losing focus after 50. The common belief is that attention is a muscle that simply weakens, that the brain runs slower, that distraction is the price of age. But that's not what the imaging shows. The task-focused parts of your brain often work fine. The problem is interference, a second signal bleeding into the line. And here's the part that should give you real hope. Suppressing the default mode network is a trainable skill. It's one of the most directly trainable functions in the entire brain, and it responds to a specific, almost absurdly simple practice. Some scientists dispute exactly how much improvement is possible at older ages. However, the direction of the evidence is consistent. The switch can be strengthened. So the question is no longer whether your focus is gone. It isn't. The question is how you teach that sticky switch to shut off on command. And the answer is a 2-minute habit your brain has been waiting for. But before the habit, you need to understand the two forces pulling your attention apart. Because if you don't know what you're fighting, the fix won't make sense, and it won't stick. The first force is the one we just named, the default mode network, and it helps to picture it clearly. Imagine your brain has 2 channels playing at once. Channel 1 is the task in front of you, the book, the conversation, the recipe. Channel 2 is the inner monologue, the wandering, the worrying, the remembering. Focus is simply the act of turning channel 1 up and channel 2 down. In a young brain, this happens automatically and cleanly. You start a task, channel 2 mutes, and you sink into what you're doing. After 50, the muting weakens. Channel 2 keeps bleeding through. And here's the cruel detail. The more you struggle to focus, the more anxious you get. And anxiety is fuel for the default mode network. So the harder you try, the louder the chatter gets. You're fighting a fire with oxygen. Why does this network get harder to suppress with age? Part of the answer is a brain chemical called norepinephrine, which acts like a volume knob for attention. It helps your brain lock onto what's relevant and tune out what isn't. Levels and regulation of it shift with age, making the volume knob less precise. A less precise knob means the irrelevant channel doesn't get turned down the way it used to. There's also the issue of fuel. The brain regions that do the suppressing, mainly in your prefrontal cortex, are metabolically expensive. They need strong blood flow and steady oxygen. After 50, blood vessels stiffen and circulation to these regions can drop, which weakens their ability to do the demanding work of holding focus and muting distraction. Now here's where it connects to your body. The single most reliable way to improve blood flow to the prefrontal cortex is physical movement. When you raise your heart rate, you trigger the release of nitric oxide, a molecule that relaxes and widens your blood vessels. A study from the University of Illinois, led by Dr. Arthur Kramer, showed that older adults who did regular aerobic activity had measurable improvements in exactly these executive control regions, the parts responsible for suppressing distraction. Their focus networks got physically stronger. So part of why focus fades after 50 is simply that the machinery doing the focusing is underfueled. The suppressor is running on low power. But understand this because it matters. That's the slow, structural part of the fix. Movement over weeks and months strengthens the hardware. The 2-minute habit works differently. It doesn't rebuild the hardware over months. It operates the switch directly in real time, the moment you need it. And to understand how it can do that, you need to meet the second force pulling your attention apart. Because it isn't inside your brain at all. It's coming through your breath. Here's the second force, and it surprises almost everyone. Your attention is controlled in part by how you breathe. This sounds like wellness folklore until you see the mechanism. Your nervous system has two modes. One is the stress mode, the fight or flight state, governed by the sympathetic nervous system. The other is the calm, focused mode, governed by the parasympathetic system, with the vagus nerve at its center. When you're in stress mode, your attention scatters by design, because evolution wanted you scanning for threats, not concentrating on a book. When you're in calm mode, your attention can settle and lock on. Here's the link most people never learn. Your breathing is the steering wheel for these two modes. When you breathe fast and shallow, especially short inhales, you push your nervous system towards stress mode and your attention fragments. When you breathe slowly, with long exhales, you activate the vagus nerve and shift into calm mode, where focus becomes possible. And here's the trap after 50. Many people develop shallow, chest-based breathing without realizing it. Tension, sedentary posture, and chronic low-grade stress all contribute. So they spend their days nudged slightly towards stress mode, with a nervous system that keeps their attention scattered, and they blame their age for what's actually a breathing pattern. Picture the vagus nerve as the brake pedal on your nervous system. A long, slow exhale presses that brake. It tells your heart to slow, your stress chemicals to drop, and crucially, it quiets the default mode network's anxious chatter. Researchers have shown that slow breathing measurably increases something called heart rate variability, a marker of a well-functioning vagus nerve, and that higher heart rate variability is linked to better attention and emotional control. If this is making sense, and you want the exact 2-minute habit that uses your breath to switch off the chatter on command, subscribe now. It's coming in just a couple of minutes, fully laid out, and it's the part almost no one over 50 knows. You won't want to miss it. So now you can see the full picture. Two forces pull your focus apart after 50. First, the default mode network gets sticky and won't mute itself. Second, shallow breathing keeps your nervous system tilted towards stress, where attention scatters by design. They feed each other. Stress breathing inflames the chatter, and the chatter raises stress, which worsens the breathing. And here's the elegant part that the science reveals. Both forces respond to the same lever. Slow, deliberate breathing presses the vagal brake, which calms the nervous system, which makes it dramatically easier for your brain to suppress the default mode network. One simple action, breath, reaches both problems at once. This is why the fix can be so short and still so powerful. You're not trying to brute force your attention into submission. You're flipping the underlying state that makes focus either possible or impossible. The research is still evolving on exactly how long the effect lasts after each session, but the immediate shift is well documented and you can feel it within a single round. But there's one more layer, the deepest one, that explains why 2 minutes specifically and why almost everyone who tries to fix their focus does the exact opposite of what works. It's the part hardly anyone talks about. Here's what almost nobody talks about. The way most people try to improve their focus actively makes it worse. When you can't concentrate, what's the instinct? You strain. You grit your teeth and try harder to force your attention onto the task. But focus is not a muscle you squeeze. Straining activates your stress system, which floods you with the very chemicals that scatter attention and feed the default mode network. So the harder you push, the more the chatter pushes back. Effort, in this case, is the enemy. Read that again. Trying harder to focus often makes you less focused. The strain is the problem. This is why willpower fails people over 50. They've been told to just concentrate, just push through. And when it doesn't work, they conclude their brain is failing. It isn't. They're using the wrong tool. They're pressing the gas and the brake at the same time. The real skill isn't forcing focus. It's removing the interference. then letting focus return on its own, because your brain wants to focus when the chatter is quiet. And here's the counterintuitive truth at the center of it all. The fastest way to sharpen your attention is not to add effort, but to add calm. Now, why 2 minutes? Here's the fascinating part. Your nervous system can shift states remarkably fast. Studies on slow breathing show that the vagal brake responds within a single minute or two of deliberate slow breaths. You don't need 30 minutes of meditation to change your state. A few cycles of long exhales can measurably shift your heart rate variability and quiet the stress signal. 2 minutes is roughly the floor at which the shift becomes reliable, which is why it's the perfect dose. Long enough to work, short enough that you'll actually do it. And there's a deeper reason this matters specifically after 50. Throughout life, your brain has a kind of attentional reserve, a capacity to recover focus after distraction. That reserve thins with age, which means you can no longer afford to waste attention fighting yourself. The 2-minute reset is so valuable precisely because it stops the waste. Instead of burning your thinning reserve on a losing struggle against the chatter, you spend 2 minutes resetting the state, and then the reserve you have left actually works. Depending on who you ask, some researchers frame the whole issue of focus after 50 not as a loss of capacity, but as a loss of state control, the ability to put your brain into the right mode on demand. And state control, unlike raw processing speed, can be trained at any age. That's a profound shift in how to think about your own mind. You may not be able to make your brain faster, but you can absolutely learn to put it into the state where it works best, whenever you choose. There's also a beautiful overlap here with everything researchers know about long-term brain health. The same slow breathing that resets your focus also lowers cortisol, the stress hormone that, when chronically elevated, damages the hippocampus, your memory center. So the 2-minute habit isn't only sharpening your attention today, it's protecting the structure of your brain over years. One small practice, reaching from this exact moment all the way out to your long-term cognitive future. So here's where it all lands. Your focus after 50 isn't gone. It's interfered with by a sticky default mode network and a stress-tilted nervous system. And both of those interferences answer to a single, fast, learnable lever. The only question left is exactly how to pull it. Here's the 2-minute habit, step by step. It's simple on purpose, because a fix you won't do is worthless. The core practice is called extended exhale breathing, and here's exactly how to do it. Sit upright but relaxed. Breathe in through your nose for a count of 4. Then breathe out slowly through slightly pursed lips for a count of 6 to 8. The exhale must be longer than the inhale. That's the entire secret, because the long exhale is what presses the vagal brake and shifts you into focus mode. Do this for 2 minutes, roughly 10 to 12 full breaths. That's it. Here's when to use it, and this matters as much as the technique. Use it right before any task that demands focus. Before you sit down to read. Before an important conversation. Before any work that needs concentration. You're deliberately setting your brain's state before you begin, instead of fighting an already scattered state halfway through. 2 minutes of priming saves you 20 minutes of struggle. A second use is the reset. The moment you notice your mind has drifted and the chatter has taken over, don't strain to drag your attention back. Stop. Do 4 or 5 extended exhale breaths right there. You're not forcing focus. You're clearing the interference so focus can return on its own. This is the opposite of what most people do, and it's why it works. Now, layer in the long-term reinforcement, because the breath resets the state, but movement rebuilds the hardware. 3 times a week, raise your heart rate for at least 20 minutes. A brisk walk counts, because this strengthens blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, the region that does the actual suppressing of distraction. Over weeks, you're making the switch itself stronger, so it gets easier to flip. And one refinement that amplifies everything. Once a day, pair your breathing practice with a single point of focus, your breath itself, just noticing each inhale and exhale. When your mind wanders, gently return to the breath. This is, in effect, training the exact muscle of suppressing the default mode network. You're rehearsing the skill of muting the chatter, so it gets stronger every day. If even one of these was new to you, hit the like button. It tells the algorithm to show this to more people over 50 who've been told their focus is just gone, when it isn't. Here's the encouraging part. Research on breathing and attention, including work building on Dr. Raichle's original default mode network discovery, consistently shows that these state control skills remain trainable well into older age. Dr. Wendy Suzuki at New York University has spent years showing that even brief, regular practices measurably improve attention and mood in older adults. Not slower decline, real improvement. Your brain stays responsive to this far later than anyone told you. You now understand something most people your age never will, that your scattered focus isn't a broken brain. It's a state you can change in 2 minutes, whenever you choose. Let me close with the part I find genuinely freeing. For most of your life, you were probably told that focus is about discipline, about trying harder, gritting through, forcing your mind to obey. And so when focus got harder after 50, you likely blamed yourself. Not enough willpower, a failing brain, a natural decline you just have to accept. None of that was the truth. The truth is gentler and far more useful. Focus was never about force. It was always about state. The ability to quiet the interference and let your attention settle where you put it. And state is something you can change, deliberately, in the span of a few slow breaths, at any age you happen to be. There's something almost moving in that. The very thing you needed was never far away or hard to reach. It was your own breath, the one tool you've carried with you every second of your life, capable of reaching into your nervous system and flipping the switch that scattered minds can't find. You didn't lack the ability, you just hadn't been shown the lever. So the next time your mind drifts off the page and the worry starts to murmur, I hope you won't reach for frustration. I hope you'll reach for 2 minutes of slow breathing instead and feel, maybe for the first time, how quickly the noise can fall away. I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, when does your focus tend to scatter most? And what were you trying to do when it happened? I bet a lot of you share the same moment. Here's the line I want you to carry with you. Your focus was never lost. It was just waiting for you to stop forcing it. Share this with someone over 50 who's been quietly frustrated with their own mind, because 2 minutes might change their whole day. And if you haven't subscribed yet, you should. What I've been researching for next week, the one morning habit that may protect your attention for decades, took months to put together. Breathe slow. Let the noise fall. Your focus has been there the whole time.